This is The Neutral Position, hosted by Nick Palmisano, bringing honesty and reason back into conversation. Here's your host, Nick Palmisano.
Hey guys, welcome to The Neutral Position. Today I have Perry Blackburn. Perry, you are a horse soldier. You essentially were first contact on the ground for the 20-year war, and you were involved in, saving Afghans all the way to the very end, and you're still involved in that now. So your contribution to this effort has been a continuous effort for over 20 years. Man, that is a lot of investment, and usually people are on and they want to talk about lots of different things, and we'll end up in lots of places, but I am super interested in hearing about young Perry to slightly older Perry now, and kind of where your mindset has gone over that period of time. So welcome to the show, and if I didn't do a good enough job introducing you, please add some cool stuff so that we all really feel the gravitas of the moment.
No, absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on. I think this is an awesome opportunity, especially right now. Just looking back at 9/11 just a couple days ago, and feeling that feeling and sensation again of what happened and what got us into a 20-year war, and what that looked like for all of us. That gave their literally right. I mean, we gave our youth for this cause. We gave our youth to war for a belief in what we believed in, and we had certainly a lot of casualties along the way. We had a lot of people that will forever have the injuries of those wars, both of those, Iraq and Afghanistan. It wasn't my first time going to war. It was certainly my first time going to the same place at war over and over and over and over. And we could see the progress that was made because of us as Americans. And I think because of the way both of those ended, the way that both of the same people in our government ended both of those wars. The same military leadership, with Austin and Milley, and the same people that were in the Democrats that were in power at the time, that ended it so abruptly and sharply. We saw two endings that were pretty catastrophic for people that served during that time. In Iraq, we saw women put in cages and sold. We saw a Jordanian pilot put into a cage and lit on fire. And it was pretty catastrophic for us who, again, had been there and served beside those same people that were now being attacked because of our vacuum that we left so abruptly, not thinking long term. Right? We're too Western thinking. You really have to have a long-term thought of how you're going to do this. And I've always said, even at the beginning, we needed a generational change in Afghanistan and Iraq. Those people needed to leave. They needed to die out. I mean, hell, look at us. We're still in Germany. I mean, when I was a kid growing up in Germany, we had terrorist attacks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We had the Nazi Party was still alive and well.
Yep.
And this is in the 70s, 30 years later. The commissary in Frankfurt, Germany was bombed by the Baader-Meinhof gang.
Yeah.
But we stayed the course, and look at what has happened to Germany, and I believe that would have been the same thing.
And for that matter, we're still in Kosovo, and we're still and I was there in '99. We're still there. But I do think I don't think this was a DOD thing though. So I don't know about Austin, but I don't think Austin's recommendation was to pull out the way we did. I know it wasn't Milley's recommendation. The administration made that decision and put State Department in charge over DOD. Like that's a fact.
It is. But here's the thing. If having commanded troops in combat, having been an officer, my number one mission is to conduct the affairs of the U.S.
Yep.
Right? Embedded in that is the lives of my men.
Of course.
Right? And that we have a way to do it. Afghanistan, for example. I don't give the Army a buy on this whatsoever, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why.
Well, I don't think they deserve a buy. I just
Okay.
but I don't think. I guess where I'm saying I think it's not entirely fair to say Austin and Milley botched this, but I am interested in hearing why you think so.
Okay.
Pull your mic closer to you, Barry.
All right.
Thank
So, I believe they're responsible for the way it was executed, right? So it was supposed to be a withdrawal. Well, the military withdraws a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
That turned into a panic exfiltration. Just get everybody to H-Kaya.
Yeah.
And they literally left their own people behind
Yep.
in Bagram and other
Yes.
areas. And that is not how you execute a military operation.
100%.
Right.
But for that portion, I do know for a fact that it was Milley's recommendation that the exfil happened from Bagram, and he got in a aggressive discussion with Sec State, and Sec State got the ear of the administration, and it became a State Department mission out of H-Kaya instead of Bagram.
Okay, but so why didn't they execute it appropriately is my thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, these are all good questions.
And so that's why I
Yeah.
hold them accountable for
Yeah,
that. Right?
I got you.
They didn't, regardless of what decisions were made, politically they still have to execute it on the ground.
Sure.
And when they got rid of, what's his name? Scott Miller, right?
Mm-hmm.
Left. We all knew something was wrong on the ground right away. And that was in July. Like, you can't leave military people without a military hierarchy. So what they decided to do was they're going to manage a combat operation from MacDill Air Force Base.
Yeah,
That right there's another bad decision
Yeah.
that they made.
yeah.
Right? We don't manage combat operations. We lead combat operations.
Yeah.
In my
No,
humble
you're entirely right. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is that, like, H-Kaya was run, like, the ambassador was in charge. It wasn't the DOD was not in charge. They had to follow the orders of the State Department on the ground. That's why there was no outer perimeter the way that we traditionally would have. There was only, essentially, they treated it as if it was an embassy.
Okay.
So there was only the perimeter, and that,
And nowhere in our doctrine, right? Nowhere in our
100%.
tactics or TTPs do we let the enemy in our perimeter.
100%.
And we did. And the effects of that was 13
Yeah.
of our brightest and best servicemen and women were killed
Yep.
for another tactical
You're completely
decision.
right. Completely right.
Right? And so that's what I mean by a culminating effect of
No,
military.
it was terrible. No,
Right.
it was terrible. It's
decisions.
just, it's very gray, and only a handful of people really know what happened. But I do know that what the military wanted to do and what happened are different things. I do know that, like, for sure. And
And I would hope so, right?
yeah.
I mean, I would hope that
Yeah.
that's not how they planned it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, a buddy of mine texted me, and he was a contractor at Bagram, and he woke up the next day, and everybody was
gone.
gone.
And they told nobody, right? They
Told
did-
nobody. And so they contacted their hire, and they said, well, we'll get somebody down there to get you. And you go, well, like, everybody's gone. There's nobody at the gate. There's equipment and ammo and demolitions and C4 and all this stuff here, TNT. We need to get rid of it. And they're like, no, that's not your responsibility. Well, he was an SF guy, contractor. He went over and started blowing that stuff up. They couldn't get to it fast enough. So then they got the order to come up to Kabul, drive up.
Oh, drive up.
Yeah, drive up.
Fuck.
The Taliban had beat them to it. Literally, the Taliban had beat them to their phase lines, and they were there at the checkpoints, and they couldn't get through it. So they had to turn around and go back to Bagram. So these are the things, that I know we do better, right?
Right.
I know as
Yeah.
in my heart as a military person,
So I'll be honest.
do that better.
This is the first time that I heard that we left Americans back there.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I thought that. Well, I knew Americans were stuck in country, but
Right.
I thought, I did not realize that when the military pulled out in the middle of the night, that they didn't give a heads up to the contractors that were Americans. I did not. I did. So I just got a gem from you right there. I had no idea it was that happened.
I didn't either until he texted me. It was crazy. And we knew each other from working together. He was a medic. We're first group guy. I'm a fifth group guy.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah. Right?
That's so fucked up.
Can you imagine that? I was like, holy mackerel, man.
Yeah.
So they literally went back and they did get a plane, dropped the plane in, they loaded up and they got them to HKIA and then out they went. But so here's another part of that, right? So as we were going through this, not only did our administration carry a narrative,
Oh yeah.
the Department of Defense carried a narrative,
Yeah. Yeah. That is true.
right?
That is true. There was a bunch of bullshit that was flying around about how things were going down, and even the news, it was like
Was
you
no
know,
news, really.
it was like, oh yeah, the Taliban are working with everybody. They're killing people.
Yeah, they're killing people. They were literally killing
Yeah.
people. I heard, you may know him, Joe. He was a Marine
Joe Robert.
that stood guard, and he gave a really great kind of experience story of what happened. And he lives with it this day of kicking people out.
So this is okay. Different Joe.
Joe.
Different Joe.
What's his last name?
He was
I interviewed him. Yeah.
I know who you're talking
Yeah.
about. But yeah.
what a story, right?
Yeah.
He didn't realize it, but the Afghans that worked with us that he was kicking out were getting rounded up by the Taliban and killed. And now he has to live with it.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, all of every soldier or Marine that stood on that wall, it was in violation of everything that we grew up with. Every kid that steps, on the line, steps on the footprints, whatever service you were in, and reports and takes that oath. I don't care if you went in because you're a hardcore patriot or you went in because you needed college money. By the time you get to a certain point, we all buy in to the idea that we're a force for good, trying to do the right thing, trying to make the world a better place, and, protecting the weak, all those things. And
Liberating the oppressed.
yeah,
It's our motto,
yeah.
right?
And, and those kids had to, I say kids because I'm in my 40s and those kids, I have a lieutenant son, so I feel comfortable saying kids because to me they're kids, but they're standing on a wall not being able to live up to what they signed up for. They did not sign up for, watching the weak be killed, watching women get abused, being dared to pull a trigger to protect someone and then, in fear of escalation. Nobody signs up for that. Nobody would sign up for that job. And so every chance I get, I talk about this because I hope somebody is putting money towards taking care of anybody that was at HKIA because, no one's talking about it, but, suicide numbers for anyone that was there is significantly higher than the already high number.
Yeah.
And it's a lot to live with.
It is. It's that moral injury that we're now talking about.
Yep.
That these young people are living with, and when you think about, again, given your youth to this country, and then you see what happened, and then we talk about the narrative, and the narrative continues today. I mean, they can't come to understanding of the truth. You know, when they talk, well, it was from where I sat.
There was no chaos.
There was no chaos.
Couldn't believe he
Well,
said that.
tell that to the Marine
I know.
on the gate that's making life and death decisions of people.
That's right.
That's pretty goddamn chaotic.
Yeah.
You know, and to hear them continue to say that, there's less than 100 Americans. Well, we knew that was a lie. You were in the groups, in the chat groups. We had a few thousand just in our groups of Americans that were trying to get out.
Yeah, the fact that they could say that with a straight face. Like, that's, you talked about it, about how, I can't remember if we were on camera or off camera, but you talked about, a lack of faith in the government after HKIA. And, I'm a pretty optimistic person, and I don't expect the government to be perfect. And I know it's a giant organization and it's slow, but that was the first time for me where it wasn't just pandering. Like, I was like, these are just outright lies. And if I know this stuff, if I'm seeing this stuff, there's no way they don't have this intelligence. They've got infinite resources. They have to know there's Americans. They have to know that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of Afghans that are SIVs that are going to be left. They have to know, all of these things. And they were getting up there selling a bill of goods of like a Taliban that wants to fit in with the world and it's going to be different and.
Well, you can't tell me the State Department didn't know how many passports they destroyed.
Of course.
Right? So all these guys that were contacting us gave their passports to the embassy so that they can get visas for their family members, and then they destroyed it, and now they're stuck.
Yeah.
Right?
They're stuck.
As American citizens, and I hate it when folks say, well, where'd they come from? Well, they're American citizens.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where they come. They could have come from Mars. They're American citizens. Let's look at us differently as citizens, which I think we have a hard time doing nowadays.
Yeah.
And I'm optimistic too, man. Like I tell you, I bled for this country. To this day, I love this country. I just cannot let it go what we did, because I never want to see it happen again. My dad was a Vietnam vet.
Mine too.
Right? He's the same way. He continues to believe what they did was the right thing. I do too. I believe what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan was the right thing. Hell, look at what we did in Afghanistan. People forget when we went into Afghanistan in 01 and 02, we were isolated. Green Berets, small force, less than 300 of us, dropped into that place in an environment where people hated us. I mean, for the first time in our life, I had never seen a video or anything where someone got their head cut off.
Yeah.
Until this war.
Yep.
That was a different enemy.
Imagine a media agency that can make a documentary that qualifies for Academy Award voting. Imagine another that created a Billboard charting music video for Five for Fighting. Imagine another that has raised so much money for nonprofits in its first year working on the Classy.org platform that at the end of the year, it was named as only the second marketing partner in Classy's history. Imagine another firm that can cover your events anywhere on planet Earth and provide a compelling series of videos about those events immediately and to your needs. And imagine another still that can help your e-commerce business take it to the next level. Now imagine that they're all the same business, Dieseljack Media. Some of you might be saying, hey, Nick, isn't that your company? And to that I answer, can a company like Dieseljack Media really be owned? Or can it merely be coaxed out like a beautiful butterfly on a spring day? As you listen to this podcast that, by the way, Dieseljack Media created, you may be asking yourself, what's our secret? It's simple. We try not to suck. Sounds easy, right? It should be. But somehow marketing companies and media agencies always seem to get it wrong. You see, we don't make PowerPoints about doing work. We do the work because we like the work. And if one of our ideas doesn't work, you know what we do? We try another one again and again and again until our ideas start to work. Because not quitting until it's right is at the heart of not sucking. And as previously mentioned, That's what we try not to do here. Diesel Jack Media. We try not to suck. Visit us at dieseljackmedia.com. That is dieseljackmedia.com. And journalists and it was
non-combatants.
Non-combatants, that's right.
Killed, got their heads cut off, videotaped. So that's, yes, sure, we were going in for retribution. Ain't no lie about that, right? Every one of us felt that need after 9/11. But we also knew the enemy we was fighting was going to be different. The other part of that craziness in that environment was once we got on the ground and we started actually fighting, and we had these firefights, we realized it wasn't just Taliban guys and Al-Qaeda guys. These Al-Qaeda guys came from everywhere. I mean, they were Chechens, Syrians, Saudis, all these countries that we had
Persians,
that we had actually tried to help at one time were now on the battlefield.
Yep.
And then Americans showed up to fight us. Remember that?
Yeah, that's right. What was his name?
What was that clown's name? John
Walker Lynn.
John Walker Lynn.
Right? So I mean this was a crazy environment. But what came out of that, and this is what, when you talk about being optimistic, right? I was telling some folks this other day, like, the more I think about it, the more I realize that yes, it was pretty traumatic. There was a lot of turmoil, and certainly at the end, it was horrible to watch people hang off onto a plane and drop to their death. But why did they do that? It wasn't just out of fear for the Taliban. It was because we had instilled in them those ideals of freedom and liberty, and education.
And they didn't want to go back.
They didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
Women voted for the first time ever in the history of that country. And women were being educated, and women were holding positions of prominence.
I mean, the oldest kids, if you were a kid that was going into kindergarten or whatever at the beginning of the war, you've grown up in a time where you've always been able to be educated. And then, that was one of the starkest, kind of stories that I've seen is these women that are now 18, 19, and they're educated. And now they're not, they get caught with a book, they're in trouble.
It's gone right back to where it was before we ever went in there.
Except
it's worse because now they know.
This is like Plato's allegory of the cave.
Yeah.
It's one thing to not have ever been educated.
Exactly.
It's something different to know what is out there and then have it taken away. That's a different pain.
That's worse.
It is significantly worse.
And we know because they reach out to us all the time. We have a large, disparate community of isolated women in Pakistan that we help every day that have no pathway to the U.S.
Yep.
They cannot get a visa. We'll never be able to get a visa. But we help them.
Don't say never, but
to the U.S. But we can get them to other places, third countries, and that's what we help them do is get visas to third countries so they can live free.
But the craziest thing about this is our media that is the champion of the oppressed and the champion of those that are in need have completely removed this from anywhere. They don't want to talk about it. They don't talk. They act like everybody's out and no one's in danger. That's the biggest crack of shit that there is.
I love that. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
So before we go further down this kind of negative path, is it true that that the Chris Helmsworth character was modeled after you?
No. I'm better looking than he is.
I was going to say, you're much better looking than he is.
No.
What'd you think of the movie?
I loved the movie. Mark Nooch was a team leader on 595, but that was kind of a story of what we were all doing.
It's a conglomeration of all the stories. So
we didn't, I didn't assault the objective on horseback. We use horses to get logistically where we need to get.
Yep.
And I think it glamorized that a little bit because we forget,
it's Hollywood.
Yeah, which was cool. I mean, it was fun. I didn't have a problem with that.
They have to make it.
Sure. And it was great to watch.
And it wasn't crazy. It wasn't crazy ridiculous. It was acceptably believable.
It was cool. But the only thing is those horses over there, they're like ponies to us.
Yeah, they're small, right?
They're small, and they're painful to ride because there's no saddles.
Oh, so you're riding bareback?
Yeah, well, with a blanket.
With a blanket?
Yeah. I mean, it was horrible.
Were you already did you already have skill in horsemanship or?
I had some skill. I had ridden horses before, and just like in the movie, some guys did, some guys didn't. But you know what? All of us knew that it's the implied task, right? You're gonna have to get on this horse, and we're gonna have to go over here.
Yeah.
Because that's the only reason.
No, but I mean, it's different. Like, I've ridden a little bit, and even a few days helps. A few days of
riding.
Yeah, just to know you got to kind of absorb it with your legs,
knees, and
But if you didn't have anything to.
No, we didn't have stirrups.
Yeah, you didn't have anything.
Oh, that's right. Oh,
so you're just that's just
yeah, that's a whole different level of riding.
I mean, there's no lifting up and getting your ass off.
You're just
the
you're like,
it's a constant
oh
pounding,
my
man.
God, that's terrible.
I came home, my wife's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I can't even talk about it." Well, I need a month before you and I can get together.
Yeah. Interestingly, almost nobody on that mission has had kids.
Exactly right.
I'm still looking for it. It was like, what the hell?
Well, what was it? Go ahead.
I was just going to say the one thing, though, really that I think was poignant about that movie is the relationship with the team leader and the warlord.
Right.
That was absolutely all of our experiences. Having to win him over and gain that trust while he's trying to gain our trust.
I mean, you guys basically lived the Robin Sage exercise in real life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is important today as it was, when I first went through the Q course 2 or 3 years ago.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, because you were, what it must have been like to try and start and eventually forge that relationship must have been just.
Yeah. So for my guy, he had a brother. My guy was Comic-Con. His brother was Pachacon, and Pachacon was just a maniac. And so when I was in isolation and we were planning for this, we had gotten all this information. And Pachacon was trying to build his own army, and he was fighting the government and all this stuff. And so my group commander asked me, what are you going to do about him? I said, he's a combatant. We're going to kill him. We're going to go after him too. Because he was as disruptive as a Taliban. He was actually linked to the Taliban at one time.
Really?
And was Comic-Con okay with that?
Comic-Con, no, absolutely not. So I wasn't going to tell him, But, of course, my commander was like, whoa, which was good. We had that conversation. But the thing is that there was so many different personalities now that were injecting themselves that were disrupting the ideals that we were putting in place and the democracy that was starting to happen, later on. And you had to watch those characters. And, we didn't really go after Pachacon, but he did actually get a force together and attacked. I'll never forget, he attacked the government in Gardez. And so everything I thought was going to happen with this guy happened. And he
really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. And so they ended up fighting him off, and then he just kind of disappeared eventually.
Kind of faded away.
Yeah.
How does explain to people how you have two brothers that end up essentially fighting for entirely different ways of life?
I think it was with Pachacon, it was a power trip. With Comic-Con, it was for country. Right, so they differentiated themselves that way, and I could tell Comic-Con, not much of a warrior. Throw it out there right away. He was not much of a warrior, but the people he surrounded himself with were. So we could,
he was a leader.
He was a leader by name,
which
goes a great deal in that culture.
Right.
And so we were able to build a force of over 900 Afghans that fought for us. We equipped them with AKs. We gave them uniforms, and we paid them a monthly salary, a whopping $200 a month.
It's a lot, though.
That's crazy for them, right?
Yeah, they didn't know what to do with it. I mean, but they loved it. They loved it so much that when it was payday, they kept coming around in the line to get more money. I couldn't blame them though. But we had a system. We had a system down. So that part of raising an army and fighting the Taliban and fighting foreign fighters and Al Qaeda was exactly what we are trained to do. special forces guys have
Yeah.
always been trained to do.
That's like the
unconventional
ultimate
warfare.
special forces mission right there.
Absolutely. And, during that time, the 06 Colonel John Mulholland went up to brief the President of the United States, George Bush, and Don Rumsfeld, the SecDef, on the SF plan. And that's pretty phenomenal.
Did you know Jason Amarine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know Jason.
Were you guys involved in the same, mission or?
No, he was. Well, yeah, I guess we were. I was in Southeast Afghanistan in Koust. I think Jason was up in by Mazar Sharif, if I'm not.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Him and another one of my teams, 334, Dave Diamond, was up in Mazar Sharif area. Yeah.
Mulholland, was that the general that spoke at the...
Yeah, he was. Yep.
Awesome guy, huh?
Great guy.
Holy smokes.
Man. I think will go down in history as one of our greatest generals, just by the mere fact of what he was able to command in combat for such a short period of time, and for us to be able to win that fight during that time.
Because he was the commander of Task Force Dagger, is that right?
He was Dagger 6, and I was Cobra 5-6.
Which, as
good guy.
As call signs go, Dagger 6 is pretty
awesome.
Pretty
man.
That's it.
Pretty awesome.
If you want a call sign, that's the one you want.
That's
right?
the one you want.
Yeah.
It's hard to get.
It's hard to beat
get
Dagger
cooler than
6.
that,
It really is.
Strength and honor. He was awesome. He did a
Peanut 3. This is Peanut 3.
yeah, not really working for the fellas,
Right?
Dagger 6. This is Sheath. I don't know. So during this period of time, what was your job? What rank were you?
I was a major. I was a company commander. I'd just taken charge of the company. So in SF, majors command companies, and you got a B team and 6 A teams. And most of us had taken command in the battalion, 1st Battalion there, and the group, John Mulholland, that July.
Really?
Yeah. We were all new, in those commands.
Holy shit.
Now, I'm a 5th group guy, right? So I'm a Legionnaire.
Right.
My team time was there on Triple Nickel, a famed also team, combat dive team. So I was known within the community, but John Mulholland wasn't, because he came from 1st group. So nobody really knew this new group commander that we had. And you're talking July, August, September. All of a sudden, we're at war. And a colonel goes up and briefs the President of the United States of America on what 5th Special Forces can bring to the fight. And they say, that's the plan I want.
Wild.
And off we went. We did exactly what we were trained to do from the get-go, from Robin Sage, as we talked about, which is the last phase of Special Forces qualification course. And we went into Afghanistan and we executed our mission. And to this day, no one can tell me we failed at that mission. We were highly successful. Highly successful. Less than 300 folks, 300 Green Berets on the ground with our Air Force partners fighting the fight. We toppled the Taliban regime and still installed a new regime change, that was
for sure
open to freedoms that we liked.
Yeah, you guys did so well that I don't think that President Bush would have started the Iraq War if you guys hadn't done so.
Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah.
So it's all your fault.
So it's your fault. That's actually why we brought
Perry,
you here
today, Perry.
We brought Perry on here to blame him. But think about it, right?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before.
if you guys hadn't had the level of efficacy that you had, the temperature in the country would not have been such where you could get away with sending the military to Iraq.
Yeah, that's key insight.
It was very much like Afghanistan is done, and people felt that way. Like, it was like we got to still find Bin Laden. We got to still find Bin Laden.
Right.
But it was not. There was and a lot of people forget this because everybody remembers how bad it got in Iraq and how bad things got in Afghanistan later. But there was a moment in time where we all thought it was going to be like peacekeeping in Afghanistan for a while and peacekeeping in Iraq, and and then everything went to shit. But yeah, like Afghanistan, a lot of the criticism on both Bush and Obama was that they took their eye off the ball on Afghanistan.
Well, and they let them come back in and take and and all that.
Yeah, because you guys were incredibly effective.
Yeah, and we had a regime change, and like we talked about earlier, I mean, people were being educated and things were moving along. But those old, ingrained terrorists, the Taliban leaders, those guys, they needed to die off in order for it really to effectively change the course.
It's true everywhere.
Right.
You need a couple generations.
Correct.
Because if it's, if you're alive during it, you're always going to have this like rose-colored lens view of how it used to be. And even if you're a kid of those people, you've lost parents, you've lost uncles, so you need to have a generation that has no knowledge of what it was, right, and doesn't have a wound from what it was.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that is that when that happens, that new generation, they bring something different that forgets all the bad stuff, right? And we just didn't let that happen. We didn't have the patience for that.
Well, I was talking to Nick that I went to Russia in 2012, and I interviewed probably 100, 200 people. Anybody that was 48 or older wanted the Soviet Union back, because all they could remember is how simple everything was, how they were taken care of, how they didn't have to worry about anything. So this generation thing you're talking about is 100% true. Everyone under 45, they loved Russia. They loved the fact that they had freedom. But the older people, they wanted the old regime back because to them that was safe.
Yeah. Perestroika, right? Wasn't that it? Yeah. That's it. I forgot you'd done that. That's awesome.
So I have a question for you that I like to ask SF guys that have been around for a while.
You calling me old?
I'm not calling you old. I'm
thinking about calling me.
No. As long as I'm here, you're safe.
Yeah, you're vintage. But so you guys executed the classic SF mission, right? Go in, build rapport, train folks that live in the area, and lead them to lead themselves, essentially. Shortly thereafter, the military started and the government started looking for SF to be almost like mini CAG. Like direct action became more important. I don't mean mini like that wasn't as an insult.
I got you.
But
you didn't.
It became more of a direct action, trigger puller, kick indoors mission. Do you think that was okay? That it was that SF maintains that same skill set and flexibility, or do you think that SF took a step back away from the core mission over the last 20 years?
No, I think that was okay.
You think it was okay?
Yeah, I do. Our core mission is UW, and in UW you conduct DA, you conduct all these other activities, some of them conventional, like some of them unconventional. Mm-hmm. So I think that was okay. Where I think we kind of went a little too far with it is we didn't maintain what we had, and we just kind of left the fact that we had actually done a lot of good stuff, and we were working by, with, and through our partner nation and now we're isolating them by doing it on our own. So we got back to that later. Later we realized, okay, it's one thing to do things unilaterally, and you're going after the top 10 or top tier people, but you need to do that with your host nation. That's our bread.
So you don't think the issue was the task? You think it was the isolation in doing the task? That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting take. I've heard a lot of guys that are like my age or older kind of bemoan the separation from like doing more direct action. Mm-hmm. And then I've had, guys that are kind of in their 30s or younger, like they look very favorably upon that being the mission. So I was just curious what you thought. I've got another. I just want you to react. I'm going to say one word. Are you ready? And you react to the word.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay. 18 X-ray.
Oh my gosh. Not proud of it.
Not proud of it?
No.
Tell me why.
Maturity. Bottom line, maturity. Now, if you come in the Army and you've been prior service and you got that maturity, then there's an opportunity for you to go to the Q course. But you're a young kid off the street, like I was. If I would have come in, like I joined when I was 18, I was not ready to be a Green Beret. No way. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that you have to have the maturity to work by, with, and through your partner nation. And I didn't have that. I didn't have the patience back then.
Yeah.
I didn't have the understanding.
And you didn't have the age to, when you made it, you were still humble. Because if you're young and you do something and you get something else, you get a little bit of ego comes in.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
look what I've done. Because I'm only a 20-year-old kid, and I'm the greatest. Where when you're older and have some more experiences, when something great happens to you, you take it with a little humbleness, I think.
I agree. I think you appreciate it more, right? I can look back on every touchdown I ever made in football now and really appreciate it. At the time, it was all about me. Look at me, touchdown. But that's kind of what happens when you're young and you're in SF. And the other thing is, a lot of those guys, we don't retain them because they get success pretty early, and then at 10 years, they're like, well, I've done everything.
Yeah.
Not realizing, because they're still not mature enough, that you haven't done everything. There's quite a bit more you can do in the regiment, and they get out.
So, I think that Tim Kennedy is one of my best friends, and he's an X-ray. And so when we talk about the X-ray program, he actually, as an X-ray, thinks it's a bad idea.
Oh, really? Interesting.
He's like, it worked for me, but I was arrogant. I made a lot of mistakes I wouldn't have made. I didn't know how the Army worked. So even though I was trained up on all these tactical tasks, things that were basic to anybody else that was going into SF, like how to get pay fixed, how to and we think about these things as small, but actually, like, he didn't know how to get a range, and he was he became a Bravo.
And he's expected to go get one.
And didn't know anybody, didn't have any boys to call and be like, hey, can you hook me up with this he thought it was, he's happy that was his path. He obviously succeeded with it, but
he was kind of the exception, I think, in some parts, because he's a great guy. I mean, I loved him. He's a great guy. He did a lot for the regiment.
Yep.
He's done a lot since he's been out. And I think sometimes as SF guys, we forget to give people credit that do quite well, like he did, right?
Sure.
And I love what he's been able to do.
But it is when I was writing the book with him, as we were talking about X-rays, because he talked about this a lot in the book and the challenges of being an X-ray, and I did a lot of research, and like X-rays had a much higher mortality rate. They took bigger risks. They didn't know as much when they were taking risks, and so we lost a lot of X-rays. And they do get out. They get out earlier. So it was interesting. I always like to ask people that question, especially people that have been around.
I'll be honest with you. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question before.
Yeah.
So it's again, keen insight to ask people that question, because it affects the regiment. Like, I was just down at Robin Sage, and then the selection course, they had 320 candidates. 61 made it. 61 were selected, right? So out of that 61 that's going to start the Q course, they'll probably see another 20 drop.
Sure.
At least. So you're talking a course now of about 40 people that are supposed to fill the regiment. And that, two things. One, it's good that we're still maintaining the standards, because it's important, because what we do is important. But the other part is that a lot of those were X-rays, 18 X-rays, and they just and we should kind of talk about what's an 18 X-ray. 18 X-ray,
Yeah.
a guy joins the Army, and he has a pathway right away, goes to basic training, AIT, and jumps into airborne school, and then the qualification course.
So
the qualification course for Green Beret.
So normally, if you don't know this, normally Special Forces draws from the Army as a whole. So any, there's definitely a leaning towards, infantry, Ranger Regiment, et cetera, but like you can come from any MOS and go to selection. And the people that do it typically are sergeants that have had some experience that, in my time, it used to be E6s. I think it's a little younger now, but, you could speak to this more intelligently.
Yeah. No,
but
you're
E5s,
right.
E6s,
Yeah.
like people that had led a squad are now going to, take it to the next level and try to become Special Forces. Whereas with the 18 X-ray program, you literally go from basic training to learning how to do whatever your MOS is, in infantry for 18 X-rays. And then you are put in the same place with guys that have served 6, 7, 8, 9 years and are taking that experience and trying to become Special Forces.
Yeah.
So that's those are two very different groups.
Why did they do that?
They needed more
They
Special
needed more
Forces.
people. So they needed a bigger pool.
Okay.
Even though those younger
Because
guys.
that sounds crazy.
Right, it does.
It sounds completely
Yeah,
lunacy.
and they were targeting, in particular, college athletes. So most people that got pulled into the X-ray program had degrees or had like a chunk of college already, and they were college athletes or they were high-level high school athletes. Like they did have a
selection
It wasn't
criteria.
like a regular kid could just
Right.
be like, I want to be an X-ray. They had to have like a higher level of acumen in a few areas, but still,
Yeah, sounds like a bad idea.
yeah.
Well, you don't have any time to mature because we don't give you time on the team
Yeah.
to mature, right? You come in to the team, we're running now.
You got to be a warrior immediately.
Yeah,
But a thinking warrior.
Right.
a
not-
thinking warrior,
yeah.
right? You got to like again. I was just with these guys going through the Robin Sage, the final phase, and they're smart guys, man. I mean, these guys. There's a smaller pool that are getting into the regiment, but they're smart, and they're warriors. They've gone through a great deal to get to just that point. And they haven't graduated, so when they come to the regiment, they're good guys. They're quality Special Forces Green Beret guys on teams. At the end of the day, though, when you have a larger pool, some of these guys, a large populations are going to come through that program that when they do graduate and go to a team, they're not going to be fit. They're mentally, maturity-wise, aren't going to be able to do the things that somebody that had been in for a little bit that jumps on them will do. And you can see it. And everybody talks about it.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody says the same thing, so it's not like we think that's the way it is. We know that's the way
Right.
it is.
Mm-hmm. So when did you leave the military?
2014. Yeah, I went overseas. I got a job in the UAE. I didn't know what to do. I panicked.
Yep.
Total panic.
Yeah.
Like, you've been around too long. You've been in 34 years. You need to retire. but can't I stay a couple more years? Like, they're like, no. And
That is a lot of years in uniform.
yeah, I mean, and part of it was, in all honesty, I joined right. My dad was a recruiter, put me in the high school, went to college, finished out college, went to basic IOBC and all infantry basic course and all the other stuff, and then eventually after that was on active duty. So there was 5 or 6 years there where I was in the reserves.
Were you OCS or
No, ROTC. Out of
ROTC.
University of Arkansas. Razorback.
Razorback Suey Pig?
Actually, inducted into the Hall of Fame in February.
Very
And,
cool.
yeah, which was really surprising. Like, I'm a C student. Y'all sure you got the right guy?
you got the right
know?
Blackburn.
But it was really cool. And it's really not. When I look at it, the body of work was done because of the exceptionalism of the people that I was with. Right, and I think anybody that has any modicum of success in the military, if they really look at it, they've been around some exceptional human beings. and the Green Berets are my team and my company that fought with me, that protected me, that when I said, hey, this is where we're going and we're going to engage the enemy, they went that way and they engaged the enemy. I mean, that's exceptional human beings. And I think that's one reason why we were talking about earlier, is like, if I would have failed at some of my tasks as epically as how we withdrew, I would have been fired.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
But because I think of the exceptional people that I had with me, I was able to be successful as an officer. And I just, you just cannot, as an officer, as a leader of men in combat, not give credit to where that credit really is due. And so, but anyway, I retired, finally retired. I went overseas to the UAE, and I was working with their Presidential Guard, and actually ended up playing American football on the semi-pro level, which was
after retirement.
Yeah.
At what age?
52.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I mean, I've been an athlete all my life.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about a pool of people.
Tackle football?
Tackle football with pads.
In 2012, I was living in Las Vegas, driving to LA to work, and they had a semi-pro football league there.
Mm-hmm.
And I put pads on at 54.
Oh,
55.
nice.
First time in, since when there was
How'd you do, Holly?
silent moves. I did okay. I played defensive tackle. But the first time I got knocked on my ass, I thought my tailbone had shattered. I'm serious.
Yeah.
The first time I was on the ground thinking, it's broken into a million pieces. It is. And this big Samoan guy that was on our team came over and picked me up. He goes, how's that feel? I'm like, I'm going to be okay. I'm just going to go over here for 2 minutes, okay, and take a rest. It freaking hurt. Didn't it hurt the first time you went down?
Well, and see,
And you played quarterback.
I was a QB. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I had protected myself.
You're a beefy quarterback.
Yeah, I was, and at the time I was in great shape.
Yeah.
I mean, coming
Yeah,
out,
yeah.
I had gone through a lot of rehab from coming out of Iraq in 2010, and so I was in really good shape. But as a quarterback, you can protect yourself a little bit more than being
That's true.
where you were at. But I played that for the next 5 years. So interestingly enough, one of the teams
You played for 5 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
I played for 2, and
then
was
COVID started coming about, and I had come back, and then we never went back, and I also played on the national team, and so we played other countries, played in Europe,
All for UAE.
all for UAE.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Why on earth did they have a football team?
They loved it. They loved American football.
Yeah.
UAE loves everything American.
Really?
Everything American. They love it. There's a mall there called the World Trade Center Mall, and it's absolutely just dedicated toward the World Trade Center. I mean, they love Americans. They love American football. But one of the teams we played was the Key Patriots. And so I got to know those guys a little bit. And then when Ukraine broke out, they remembered me. And so they started contacting me on
and that's
Signal.
how you got pulled into that.
That's how I got pulled into, helping those guys out in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, you and I were talking earlier a little bit about the connections and networks you make and the people that you meet. And one thing I realized after August 2021 is pick up the phone when people call. You never know who it's going to be.
Well, here's what's really funny, folks. I met Perry at a Moral Compass event in D.C., and I invited him to come down and be on the show. And he really, I think he thought he was coming on to be on the show with me, and then he walks in today, and I say, Perry, this is Nick. This is the show, Neutral Position, Nick Palmisano. Nick Palmisano owns the company, and they've been talking to each other on Signal for how long?
Since around the time H. Kaya was
Yeah,
falling.
a couple years.
Yeah.
Never met.
Yeah,
Never met.
But we had multiple conversations. Like when I was in Pakistan, and we were trying to solve the some of the issues associated with, all those clowns that had been screwing over people that thought they were getting visas, and and I was getting safe houses, and we talked a whole bunch, and he was like, kind of like hang in there conversations.
Yeah.
Like, like you're not the first to be dealing with this bullshit, and then we've been signal buddies for
That's
2
funny.
years, and truth be told, like I didn't even have a face until you were like, yeah, Perry's going to be on. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I better actually look
who this
Perry
guy
up and
is.
see what he looks like. I knew you were like,
Right.
but so it's a super, super small world.
So a lot of these networks that are doing this tremendous amount of work for people,
Yeah,
we've never met each other.
that's right. That's
People are like, what? Like my second and third and fourth and fifth people that are just on this constantly, I've never met them.
Yeah.
And we talk every day.
So
It's-
so let's fast forward to the Kaya is falling. Afghanistan is in retreat. What are you doing? How do you get roped into everything?
I saw it happen, getting ready to happen,
Yep.
and I still have this pictured. I put on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and everything else. Here's who I am. Here's my phone number. Call me if you need help. And people did. And then we started putting these networks together on Signal, hundreds of people at a time.
Yep.
And we had all these different groups. And Scott Mann, I don't know if y'all know Scott. Scott is a buddy of mine. We were in SOCOM together. We started talking, and so we called it a mesh network. People were in touch points of all these different networks, but we didn't have to be in every single one. I mean, we were just about, though, right? I mean, holy mackerel.
Yeah.
And so that's what I started doing. And the interesting thing was, at the time, I had my company Next Ridge Line Over, had a contract with MARSOC. So I had a touch point in HKIA with the Marines. So I could talk to the Marines on the phone and tell them that there's someone that has a pathway to the States. He was our translator. He proved to me he was our translator through certificates that we gave him, or he had an American passport. Let them in, and we would come up with these code words.
Yeah.
So the pineapple thing was kind of funny because we were in that group, and I think it was Zach Lois, who was either a first or 10th group guy, right? I think we were coming up. Okay, we got this other guy. We're going to try to get him out, and he was one of 595's translators, and I think Zach said, "Well, let's use pineapple," and I was like, "That's brilliant," because nobody knows what a pineapple is over there. They can't hardly say it, right? So the guy gets to the gate. I tell the Marines and the other guys that have contacted the Marines that, hey, if you hear pineapple, get him out. And that's how he got out, was through pineapple. And then we called it Pineapple Express, as it, kind of morphed into things, which was kind of cool. I mean, and so we were all kind of doing that to try to help people get out until, of course, the IED went off.
That ended it for everybody.
And that just changed it.
That ended it for
Game
everybody.
changer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got, Scott, when Scott was about to publish his book, I gave him a ton of advice on, like, how to do, how to market it, and that's what we do every day. So, like,
Nice.
we linked up with his team, and we talked a lot. He's a good man. And when we got back from HKIA, there's still a lot of people that think that we were Pineapple Express because everybody, came back at the same time and the news was reporting on Pineapple Express, and but we were calling ourselves Task Force 68, and
That's right.
and but yeah, like, to the public, it was all one group. And it's funny because, like, we knew lots of people were operating, but there wasn't a lot of crossover because we were, our team was at Hangar 9, and just about everybody else was Hangar 8, and so
Right. Yeah.
yeah, like, we didn't bump into too many people that weren't kind of with our group, and so.
So let me ask you something real quick about that, because it's something, again, when we talk about, what happened.
Yeah.
What did you think about our response to the IED perpetrator? Like, we came out and said, we got him, right? We got the planner.
Yeah.
And then we found out, like, all of us in our networks knew really soon that's not true.
Yeah.
Because we had
they were trying to put a bow on it so that they could feel good about being done with it.
So again, it goes back to, this is why I think for me at this period is like, I can't trust the narrative. I can just trust us as Americans.
Yeah.
Right? What we're capable of doing.
Yep.
And what we've been able to do, you know, guys like you, other folks that are in all these networks that constantly work in this. I mean, we're saving lives today, to this day, by getting people out that are supposed to get out.
What do you mean, man? We got everybody out.
Yeah, there's only 100 left, right? Well, then the government's own accounting, there was 12 in November of 2021. They came out and said there was over 12,000.
Yeah.
That was their own accounting, and yet the same people kept saying that there was less than 100. Well, your own department said that that's not true.
Yep.
And then they said, well, yeah, we didn't really get the planner. Yeah, we know that because the NGOs immediately came up on the net and said, you got the guy that is literally going from house to house with water and food for Americans. You killed him.
Look, I'm going to level with you, viewer. I'm not a very organized person. Where I shine in other aspects of my life like a bright diamond, I'm severely lacking in the organization aspect, which has caused some issues. The thought of planning an entire volunteer-based event on a hotel cocktail napkin may cause serious psychic damage to a type A viewer at home, for which I apologize for putting that vision in your head. But when I reached that point, I realized I needed help. That's where I found Bugle. They are unbelievably easy to use, and I cannot even describe how useful they are. It's almost like Rory, who wrote this ad, wrote the same thing twice in the same sentence. I want to introduce you to BugleVolunteers.com. It's an incredible app that basically does all the work for you. You tell people where they need to be, when they need to be, they sign up, and you just enter the information into this system, and it does the rest. I've never had an easier time providing feedback to the many incredible people that help us out with so many different things. So if you, like me, are a disorganized fuck, consider BugleVolunteers.com. And even if you are organized, this makes your life easier. BugleVolunteers.com, check it out. Or else, we'll kill Tom. Yeah. I am not in any way, shape, or form a conspiracy guy, but I am now... The Afghanistan situation has me so distrusting of our government and what they say versus what they do, that I'm at the point where if all of a sudden I see a surge of this is the way you should think about something, about any topic, I assume it's misinformation, and I don't necessarily go the other way, but I pump the brakes. And start going, all right, like what exactly is happening here? Because it's impossible that in such a short period of time, this huge group of people all thinks exactly the same way on this very new idea. You know?
No, absolutely. And you know, I think the other thing is I'm not a conspiracy theorist either. I mean, the whole 9/11 thing, I don't buy into that. Okay, right? It's like, come on. But I also am aware enough now that when I know something's not right, and you're telling me something different, I can't follow that anymore.
Yeah.
And I've got to speak out.
Yeah.
And that's hurt me. I mean, it's
I get it.
But it's important
that
we do say, I know the truth. I mean, how many congressmen and senators did you speak to during that time? I mean, they were calling me.
A ton.
What are you doing calling me? I'm a C student, man. You know what I mean? You're calling me. Well, I heard you could get people out. Now we're helping them get people out. You're a senator and a congressman.
Well, I will say this. I've got to give shouts out to people that were awesome. Senator Tillis opened a lot of doors for
Absolutely.
us.
There was some great.
He opened up as many doors as he could.
Sure.
I will always be thankful to him for that.
Senator Cotton was another one. there were state senators and Congress people that got a hold of us,
Yep.
and they were searching for answers, and they were trying to grapple with what was the truth and what wasn't. And and I look at it and I think, well, this shouldn't be about politics. This should be about humanity, right? We sold a bill of goods to people. We broke it, as Colin Powell would say. We need to fix it, and instead we literally gave a speech, turned our back, and walked off the stage.
Yep.
As that was it. It was done. We're over. Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
But they didn't count on us.
No, they didn't count on the veterans going over there and rescuing people.
It's an interesting thing, and I've talked about this a bit. So I hate, for those of you out there, if I'm beating a dead horse, I'm going to do it anyway. I've never seen the veteran community come together more than the fall of Afghanistan. And I'm not talking about just like the Afghan veteran community or even the GWAT veteran community. I'm talking about Vietnam vets. I'm talking about Cold War vets. I'm talking about it was just like, what can we do? Everybody, what can we do? I can make lists. I can call this congressman. I can make this video. Everybody was engaged in solving the problem, while I feel our government was engaged in putting the problem to bed as opposed to solving it. And so I said at the time, because this guy right here, when we got back when I landed back in the United States, the first thing I saw was my wife, and I was thrilled to see her.
1 o'clock in the morning.
1 o'clock in the morning. So Tim and I, our journey was UAE to Afghanistan. Well, it was France to UAE to Afghanistan, back to UAE, then to Albania to bring some Afghans there, then to Greece to talk to members of Greek parliament to see if they would accept Afghans. And then from Greece, we flew back to Atlanta, and then Tim went to Texas, and I flew to North Carolina. So 1 a.m., plane lands. I see my wife, I'm hugging my wife, and out of the corner of my eye, I see this bastard, and he's filming. And I'm like, dude, and he's like, we're going to the studio, and this was at our old place, and I'm going to interview you. And I was like, I do not fucking want to do this interview. Let's do it tomorrow or in a couple days. And he goes, once you sleep, you're going to give me these clean officer bullshit answers, and I want to talk to you right now. And my wife was like, you got to talk to him right now while it's fresh. And so they dragged me, and he interviewed me for, I don't know, 2 hours or
2 hours.
So, and I got home at 5 a.m. and I was pissed about it. But that ended up being kind of like the baseline for the documentary we made. And I do agree that if I had time to sleep, it would have been different. It would have been a little more political. It would have been a little more, but I was pissed.
Less edgy.
I was pissed.
Oh,
I was sad. I was emotionally exhausted. It was,
But it was the truth, and you said that you told me the truth that night.
Yeah.
And
I never lied.
You wouldn't have lied.
But I might have cleaned it
you
up.
might have cleaned it up a little bit, and I knew that.
That's a good call.
But you said it that night. You said, "I've never been more proud to be an American and more embarrassed by my government."
More embarrassed of America.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I think that's a good way to put it. For me, another hard time was watching John Kirby.
Yeah.
Oh my!
And
I talk about that all the time, and I'm a broken record.
And listen, I know that John Kirby has fought a lot of quiet battles on behalf of veterans and Afghans, but I did not appreciate his public message at all.
No.
I mean,
because it was a lie. You both know it was a lie.
Yeah.
So let's for a second, and it just dawned on me. Yes, we do know that. We know that for a fact. And we watched John Kirby struggle with lying. I mean, he had every tick there ever was as he was doing it. Why not just tell the goddamn truth as you know it?
Because this administration does not want more Afghans. And I'm not saying the Republicans would be better. Trust me, I'm not saying that. But I know this administration wants the Afghanistan thing to be over.
Absolutely. But what they did was they galvanized us.
Yes.
Right. So instead of just saying,
Yes.
we know that there's more than 100, we're working on getting them out and actually work on getting them out. They didn't. They did something totally opposite, which galvanized all of us to do something.
To do something.
And to this day, we're still at it, you know. And that's why I say, it's like, you know, try something different, man. Try telling the truth, you know. I mean, you don't have to tell the truth about everything. I get we got to hide some things.
Yeah. But and I'm glad you guys are still having success. We have found it harder and harder to move anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's been a few months now since we've really gotten anybody to a good spot. And and we were at least getting a couple a month for a while, and right in the aftermath we were getting thousands. And then it went to, 100 a month, and then it went to like a dozen a month, and now it's
AFG Free's the same way. I mean, that's, I knew I need, and when you said people came to you and said, what do you need? I said, I need a nonprofit because I'm going to have to spend money on this, and I need to get people. I mean, what we really all need is a third party country that is actually interested in Afghans. Yes. Yeah.
Not is willing to be, paid or anything like a country that actually sees the value, because at the very least under this administration, we're not going to move any measurable number of Afghans into the United States.
We're not. Even the ones that have a pathway.
That's right. Even the ones that have a pathway. They slow roll it so much, people give up.
So we have families that are bifurcated. We got families in the States. They're part of the, husband and wife then broke up.
Yeah, I won't go into details to protect people, but there's a woman that I spoke with in Charlotte, 2 weeks ago. Like her husband, served. They're married. Her family is there. She's on a pathway to American citizenship, right?
Yeah.
They're being threatened because of her.
Right. And she's looking at you like, can you help me?
Yeah. And it's like, and, my quick answer is like, well, they will eventually, once you're a citizen and, which is still a few years off, then you can do a family visa. But that, like we're talking about years.
Years. Right. Which is horrible. And then they're trying to, and they're really kind of, like the Afghans that we know that came here, which is really a cool story, is they came here and they went right to work. Like those guys are working. Like they're trying to get after it. They're trying to make a living. And matter of fact, there was one of our translators in D.C. that was an Uber driver at night, and then he was working odd jobs during the day, and he's just getting after it. He got killed as an Uber driver in D.C.
I saw that story.
Right? I mean, a horrible story.
That's terrible.
But the whole ideal, though, of them being here and jumping into the community and being part of us and working and not asking for much other than the opportunity is what we are as Americans, is why people came to America in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. And we're turning our back on a class of folks that can really be part of this country, that want to be part of this country.
100%. So what's next for you?
So Ukraine, I'll still be helping out in Ukraine. We deliver food to Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine. Again, working by, with, and through the Ukrainians. Still doing that. Medicine on a smaller scale, but we'll do whatever AFG Free needs to do to continue to liberate the oppressed, just like our Green Beret motto. It's something that I think that I will probably go to my grave with, is making sure that we never give up on the people that worked with us and
That's
for
awesome.
us.
That's awesome. All right, last thing we got to do, Hollywood. Rapid fire question round.
Uh-oh. Let's get it on.
You have 10
Let's get it on.
You've
You
got
have
10 seconds per.
There's an electric charge
We
in
do
your
need
seat.
we need to
and
get
I'll
some new
push this-
we got to get some more spicy ones in here.
We do.
We got to spice it up a little bit. But the first question I ask everybody: what is the toughest animal you think that you could defeat in hand-to-hand combat?
Monkey.
What kind of monkey?
A little one.
A small monkey.
Real litty bitty
A
one.
small monkey. What's your go-to karaoke song?
I don't have one. I'm a horrible singer. The good Lord has blessed me with many things, but singing, that's my family.
All right. I feel like that's the
Absolutely not.
coward's answer, but
I feel like
I'll
it's the
allow it.
truth, though. I do feel like it's the truth.
Sweet Caroline. See there?
Bum, bum,
I think you're the second
Horrible.
person to try that one. That wasn't that bad. How many 7-year-olds do you think you could fight before they'd overpower you?
7.
7-year-olds. What would be your weapon of choice in the zombie apocalypse?
Sword.
A sword.
Definitely a sword.
What kind of sword?
A big one.
Like a claymore?
Yeah, big, sharp, yes. Yeah.
What's the most interesting place you've ever been?
Djibouti. Djibouti, Africa.
Djibouti's interesting. Yeah. What's your guilty pleasure?
Sweets. I like sweet stuff, man. I just can't get away from it.
What fictional character are you most like?
Superman.
Okay.
You know why?
Okay.
Not
Don't
because
know
I'm
why.
such a badass, which I am. I mean, we
Because
all
you
are,
have
right?
an alter ego.
Because there's that one thing, man, that always gets me. You know, like he had kryptonite.
What's your kryptonite?
My wife.
Okay.
She,
Good
bring-
answer.
she
That's a
brings
good-
me down hard,
that's a
man.
good answer.
She brings me
That's
to
a
my
good
level
answer.
quick.
What's been your favorite age so far?
33.
Why 33?
Jesus Christ died at 33, and for some reason I remember being in the best shape I ever was.
At
I was
33?
At 33, I was an ODA team leader, combat diver. I was on the top of the world with the greatest people in the world, and I always remember that being my most fondest years.
How long have you been married?
40 years.
And
Now-
how'd you meet?
In high school, actually. Can you believe the shit I put up with for 40 years?
Yeah, but she's saying that a lot every day, isn't she?
Yes.
She got no reason to say it.
Name your top 3 favorite cars.
Mustang, Volkswagen, Beetle Bug,
That's a good car.
and Dodge Ram truck.
Okay. Worst piece of advice you've ever received.
Don't try this. It's not going to work out for you.
What's one job nobody could pay you enough to do?
Plumber. I think a plumber.
I don't like plumbing either. I can do it.
I can do it. I
But
do
it's
it.
not
But
my
I
thing.
just don't. It's not my wheelhouse.
If you could invite 3 people to dinner, living, dead, fictional, non-fictional, who would they be?
You.
Thanks.
I'd invite you. I'd invite Hollywood. And I'd invite Joe Montana.
That's a good one.
He's an
Italian
awesome
quarterbacks.
guy. My mom, God bless her soul. And then I think the other guy that I'd really like to meet one time would be Abraham Lincoln, and just have that conversation.
Old Abe, he gets a
He gets
lot of votes.
Abe gets a lot of.
Abe gets a lot of
He
votes.
Does he?
Yeah.
He does. Yep.
Interesting.
What celebrity would you most like to switch lives with? And you can't give the wuss answer that your life is good and you don't want to switch with anybody.
Who would I want to switch with? Liam Nelson.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I like. Yeah, I'd switch
Basically,
with
the
him.
guy that plays you in movies.
Yeah, I would switch with him.
What's your favorite book that you've read in the last year?
In the last year, The Pillars of the Earth, I read it again, and it's still my favorite book. It's just an incredible long read.
He's the second person, I think, that's brought that book up.
Yeah, right.
And I have not read it.
Me
And
either, so I guess we're gonna have to
feel
read
like I
it.
need to. The Pillars of Earth.
Yeah, it's really it's an incredible book. I think just well written.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're
I
welcome.
Appreciate it. Folks, this is Perry. We're going to put his information up. You have social media and all that kind of
I
stuff.
do.
We're going to throw it up on the screen so you can follow this guy. He's been fighting in wars for like 107 years and looks
In
like...
fact, Perry was the first passenger I took in my Sopwith Camel back in the day when I was first started flying.
And he looks like he's ready for more. really a pleasure to meet you in person after a couple years of
Yeah.
Signal, and thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely, bro.
We'll see you next week, guys.